Two Zerynthia species, Zerynthia rumina, the Spanish Festoon, and Zerynthia polyxena, the Southern Festoon, inhabit the remote and unspoilt areas of the southeast of France. The Spanish Festoon prefers dry, rocky parts of the garrigue, whilst the Southern Festoon chooses wetter, marshy places. Even though they live apart in separate and specific habitats, these two colourful and unique species of butterflies have very close genetic ties, and at first sight look similar in their colour and markings. The Southern Festoon has less red in the pattern on its superior wings than the Spanish Festoon. It is the geography of the hills of the Middle Var that separates the habitats of these two butterfly species. Early morning, at the beginning of spring, a newly hatched male Southern Festoon warms up in the sun, then flies off in search of nectar, and meets up with a female wall brown, Lasiamata megara, on a dandelion, but she doesn't fall for his charms. Preoccupied, this male risks becoming easy prey. A little way off, amongst the vegetation, a female has just hatched and dries her wings. As soon as she flies off, the male immediately spots her and captures her in his wings in mid-flight. The two butterflies land on a dandelion bud, where the male tries to mate. The male manoeuvres himself for a successful coupling. And once it's done, the two butterflies cling on in opposite positions on a twig. The two sexes are similar. The male, positioned underneath, moves off after 45 minutes. The female flies away in search of nectar and drinks for the first time. Here the houses are abandoned, and all that remains are the ruins surrounded by a large expanse of the overgrown wasteland in flower, thus offering a wide variety of plants and nectar. Once the female has had enough to drink, she leaves in search of the host plant, Aristolochia rotunda, which grows in damp, grassy places. In Provence, the females lay several isolated eggs. Here, an egg resembling a small pearl is laid on the underside of a leaf. But the eggs may also be laid on the upper surface. From time to time she rests, exposing her abdomen to the sun. Suddenly a storm hits. A wild boar looks for shelter under the foliage. In search of food, the wild boar turn over the soil as they go, making room for host plants to grow amongst the dense vegetation. The eggs hatch at the beginning of May, and the caterpillars grow quickly, feeding on the flowers and leaves of Aristolochia, their only host plant. The caterpillar rests and is completely still for 2 days, and then begins to molt from stage 3 to 4. The caterpillars of male butterflies are darker and turn into chrysalises sooner than the paler, larger caterpillars, which will eventually become female butterflies. These female caterpillars prefer to eat the host plant flowers, which are high in protein content. The Zerynthia caterpillars weave silk threads all along the way down the plant stems, providing a safe lifeline. On reaching maturity, the caterpillar leaves the host plant in search of an ideal place to change into a chrysalis. Choosing a protected spot, out of the sun, damp and well camouflaged in the dense grass. The caterpillar weaves loose silken threads around the twigs, forming a kind of nest. Using its head, the caterpillar presses at the vegetation, thus creating more space. After 3 days, metamorphosis into a chrysalis begins. It takes about half an hour to complete. The film is accelerated by 5 times. So as not to attract predators, the chrysalis gets rid of its old skin. It seems exhausted and needs to regain its strength. Once the chrysalis has hardened, it is very well camouflaged and looks like a twig. Look at the little brush with hooked bristles on the tip of its head. Several days later, the silken lace holding the chrysalis is moved to the brush, securing the chrysalis to the twig. A wandering flock of sheep allows host plant seeds to establish on suitable soil. It's so important that the flock doesn't stay too long in any one place, otherwise the chrysalises might be gobbled up by the grazing sheep. The chrysalis will hibernate until the spring. It's the beginning of April, And in a neighbouring habitat that's much drier and arid, we find the territory of the Spanish Festoon. A male is energetically patrolling his patch, then drinks from some time before returning to his command, finding a lookout where he can observe his territory. As soon as a female approaches, he goes to meet her and a courtship flight follows. They land a little further off on some thyme and mate successfully. The wings are decorated with carmine red dots. The butterflies separate after an hour. The male is the first to leave. Without delay, the female lays her eggs on her preferred plant, Aristolochia pistolochia, which grows in dry and arid places. This host plant looks very much like Aristolochia rotunda. The leaves of Aristolochia pistolochia have a smaller petiole than those of Aristolochia rotunda and are attached directly to the stem. The Hermann's tortoise lives here too. It's a terrestrial species found only in France and only in the Var and on Corsica. It is a highly protected species which is very vulnerable. As time goes by, the egg matures and we can see the little caterpillar through the egg coating. Ready to hatch, the little caterpillar nibbles an exit hole and wriggles out of the eggshell. It takes nearly half an hour to free itself from the confines of the egg. It orientates itself and then goes off in search of a flower, which serves as a hideout as well as a food source. The flowers of Aristolochia pistolochia look very like those of Aristolochia rotunda. The caterpillars take about a month to go through 5 stages of development. This motionless caterpillar is ready to molt. At the 3rd stage, the caterpillars turn a yellowy colour. At stage 4, a line of small black marks appears, and the caterpillar begins to eat the leaves as well. Between bouts of feeding, the caterpillars hide under the host plant leaves, sheltering from the sun. From stage 5 on, The caterpillars are pinkish in colour and eat hungrily. Now they hide away at the base of the host plant. Just before becoming a chrysalis, the caterpillar leaves the plant and completely conceals itself amongst the surroundings. Perfectly hidden amongst the sprigs of grass, this festoon, like the other species, weaves a silken cord to anchor itself while it changes into a chrysalis, as do the caterpillars of the swallowtail, these also being from the same Papilioides family. Several days later, this chrysalis is attached in the same manner as the Spanish festoon. At the end of the afternoon in the middle of July, a forest fire starts. Despite the efforts to prevent forest fires, every year in our region, hundreds of hectares go up in smoke. This Hermann's tortoise has survived the fires. When the fire started, it must have been at the riverbank drinking or in a safe place, and thus spared from the fire. They are very attached to their home surroundings, and despite the devastation, they will try unceasingly to return. The chrysalises which have escaped the blaze and also survived will hibernate until the following spring. The colour of the chrysalises of this species change to match their surroundings. In the spring, little by little, the vegetation reappears from the ashes. The cork oak, being naturally incombustible, shoots again. And here the scarab, Capnodus tenebrionis, is attracted by the burnt wood, where it will lay its eggs. As a result of the fires, the natural barriers between the dry habitat of the Spanish festoon and the wet habitat of the Southern festoon are gone. 2 days before hatching, the chrysalis twists and turns in all directions. It's April, and this Southern festoon, well hidden in a tuft of grass, is ready to hatch. And the butterfly appears. It climbs higher up the vegetation, preparing to fill out its wings. The wings inflate as blood is pumped into them. Although the markings on the lower wings are magnificent colours, this butterfly blends in perfectly amid the grass. The territorial male Southern Festoons don't move far from where they hatched. The females hatch after the males and explore the new passageways along the watercourse created by the forest fires of the previous year, and which pass through the drier areas and connect into new habitats. And they find nectar along the grassy edges. Here a male Spanish Festoon in his dry habitat watches out for a passing female. Et voilà, a female entering his territory. The resident male spots her right away and goes to meet her, catching her mid-flight between his wings, and then the two butterflies fall to the ground. While they are trying to mate, we realize suddenly that it's not a female Southern Festoon, but a female Spanish Festoon. It's therefore an attempt at a hybrid mating, in other words, a mating of the two Zerynthias species, a male Spanish and a female Southern Festoon. The opposite situation has been seen in the wetter habitat, showing that the female Spanish Festoons also travel great distances. Searching for their host plant, they cross into the Southern Festoon habitat. As soon as a female approaches, he heads off towards her and catches her mid-air. A hybrid coupling follows between the male of the Southern Festoon and the female of the Spanish Festoon. It is without doubt a rare sight and the first time that a hybrid mating has been photographed in nature. The female Spanish Festoon, positioned on top, has a whiter abdomen than that of the male Southern Festoon. More in-depth and specific studies are necessary to investigate this phenomenon. But it's not known whether or not this match will produce fertile offspring, giving rise to a new species. The forest fires without doubt contribute to the meeting up of these two species. The Southern Festoon is on the red list for protected butterflies of France. These magnificent and alluring butterflies of our Provence countryside also present us with mysteries to discover and unfold. And our observations could be the starting point for research by other interested enthusiasts.